Okay guys, part 3, point slope form. So this is point slope form, y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So let me tell you where this comes from. What happens is this. This is y minus y divided by x minus x. Well, if you want to get rid of the fraction, the way you get rid of dividing is by multiplying, right? Multiplying what's on the bottom. So if you multiply this, it'll cancel out the x's. But now, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. So now you have y minus y equals mx minus x. So basically, this formula comes from the slope formula. Okay? Um, that's the origin of it. Now, what you need is very straightforward. You need the slope and you need 1 point, just 1 point. If you have that, you can do this. So most of the time, you're going to get a coordinate, x and y, and you're going to get a slope. And those points go where it says x1 and y1. You put these numbers in here, and you put the slope in there. So here's what it should look like, something like this. Okay? Now, if you're going to graph in point slope form, you have to be careful because you don't have a slope intercept. What you have are the coordinates. Now remember, the original formula looks like this. Now, what that means is, how do they change the negative sign from both of them? How do they change these negatives to positives? Usually the way it changes is because you plug in a negative number. If you plug in a negative number for x and for y, those numbers will change from being negatives to positives. So this is the information in the equation. There's your point and there's your slope. So if you're going to graph it, you're not going to start on the y-axis because you can't. You don't know what the y-intercept is. So you're going to start with this point, -1, -3. That's your point. And then you have to use the slope. So in this case, the slope is -2, so it's going down 2 over 1. So the line is going this way. And that's what the line would look like, down 2 over 1. So that's how you graph it. So you don't start on the y-axis, you start with the point that they give you, and then from this point you count the slope, -2 down 2 over 1. All right, so that's how you graph it. Now, if you're going to write this in point slope, remember, this is your x1 and this is your y1, okay? So you go y minus y1, which is a 1 in this case, equals slope 3, x minus x1, which is a 2. Now these signs are negative because when you plug in these numbers, they don't change the negative sign. They stay the same, okay? Here, if you plugged in a -1 and a -3, it changes those signs to positives. So just be aware of that. Be careful with that. All right, now, what if they don't give you slope? What if they just give you some points? Well, guys, you have to start by finding the slope. There's no way around it. So we go back to our slope formula. y2 minus y1. So it goes like this. 4 minus 1, 3 minus -5. Okay, so you get 3 minus 1 is 3. This is going to add, so you get 8. So your slope is 3/8. That's it. So in my equation, what I would do is I would pick one of these points. So let's just pick this one. Let's pick 3, 4, because I'd rather not pick the one with the negative sign. It would look like this. Y minus 4 equals 3/8 x minus 3. And there you guys go. That's my point slope. Now, one more thing though, before we move on to the word problem. What if they don't want point slope? What if they want it in slope intercept form? We need to talk about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this example to show you how I would turn it into this, okay? How do you go from this to this? So here's how you start. You have point slope, what we have to do is first we're going to distribute. We're going to take the slope and we're going to multiply it to both of these. So it's going to look like this. Yeah. Then this is almost ready to look like this, except there's a 4 here. So you got to get rid of that 4. So we're going to use inverse operations and we're going to add 4 to both sides. Now, this is where you have to be careful. You could probably use a calculator actually. Negative 6/8 plus 4. So if we're going to add 4 to this, right, you should probably turn this into a fraction, right? So 4 over 1. Something like this. And then add this up. And you'll get your b, or your y-intercept. And it's going to look something like this. That would be your answer. And that's how you change it from point slope to slope intercept. You distribute, and then you move the number here, the y number, over using inverse operations. And then that looks like that. All right. Now, the last thing, the word problem. If you have a word problem, you want to identify the 2 points that are in here. There's 2 coordinates in the word problem usually for these problems. So like if you drive the rental truck 60 miles, it will cost you 50 bucks. If you drive it 100 miles, it'll cost you 60 bucks. What equation can you write for this scenario? So the 2 points would be the miles and the cost. So x and y, where x is miles and y is the cost. So my 2 points are this. 60 is with 50. 60 miles is 50 bucks. And then 60 miles, sorry, 100 miles. I just messed this up, didn't I? I did. Sorry about that. 100 miles is 60 bucks. That's better. Sorry about that. Those are your 2 points. Miles and cost. Miles and cost. So, if you want to find the slope, again, you do y2 minus y1. So 60 minus 50. 100 minus 60, you get 10 over 40, you get a slope of 1 over 4. Then if you want to just write the point slope formula, you could just choose one of these points. Let's just go with the smaller one, where this is my x1 and my y1 right here, the first points. It will look like this. Y minus 50 equals 1/4 x minus 60. And there you go. Then actually, if you distribute this, if you were to distribute this and move the 50, right, you get something that looks like this. 1/4 of 60 is actually 15 if you multiply that. Then if you're going to move the 50, you're going to add 50 to both sides. You get this equation. Actually, this is the equation from the last lesson that we did with the truck rentals. And remember, it costs 25 cents a mile? Yeah, this is the same thing, except it's using a fraction instead of a decimal. But guys, both of these are correct answers. This is just written in point slope, and this is written in slope intercept. So either of these is an equation that you can use to represent the answer. And that's point slope.